My talk today does not consider our current world, but rather Pompeii, the ancient Roman city destroyed in 79 AD by the eruption of Mount Vesuvius. As an archaeologist, I've worked at more than 50 different sites across the Mediterranean. Among these, Pompeii has always been one of my favorites, chiefly because its archaeological wealth encourages us to reanimate the city. The haunting images of victims trapped in Pompeii evoke strong emotions. Like us, these people had to manage their lives and their city, which included aspects of rubbish disposal. Sustainability was an issue for them too. Although ancient Pompeians discarded all manner of rubbish, what I'll concentrate upon here today is the debris noted through archaeological animal bones, otherwise known as zooarchaeological remains, my particular field of expertise. How did households dispose of or utilize this faunal rubbish, and how might attitudes and practices vary? Moreover, what can we learn from them to help us today? This map locates the houses where zooarchaeological data exist. Certainly some measure of cleanliness existed. Occupants did not live like hoarders in trash-laden rooms. To some extent, the city was self-cleaning. Dogs, pigs, and other animals kept in the houses or running wild no doubt consumed what was edible. Whatever waste materials that could be reused or scavenged in some way probably were. The ancient Romans were relatively pragmatic in these respects. Nevertheless, across households, more trash did amass in somewhat out-of-the-way areas, such as room corners or less traversed areas, or within convenient disposal spots, such as latrines, gardens, outdoor alleyways, and pathways. But generally, this tended not to be any big, conspicuous pieces. It seems most faunal waste was removed from the city entirely, either over the walls or in designated suburban dumps. Ancient authors indicate that rubbish collection and street cleaning operated in some cities, with carts used to remove all manner of refuse. Some of the largest deposits from ancient Pompeii derive from trash heaps just outside the city walls, but convenience often dictated measures here. People did not walk too far to discard waste. Even cemetery paths lining external streets were not spared. They too often accumulated more bone waste than one might expect. Cleanliness, I suppose, not on par with godliness in these cases. Despite some rubbish clearance to external areas, laziness, necessity, and convenience or forgetfulness still flourished within the city. Presumably, faunal materials from alleyways and street contexts accumulated from secondary deposition, being swept from houses and shops or discarded by patrons in the streets. Much household rubbish left the house through the window at night. The ancient author Juvenal satirically advises people to draft their will before venturing out in the evening, lest they be hit on the head by a pot thrown from a window. The care of the streets was a local obligation. Some officials were appointed to ensure inhabitants did their duty, but it was difficult to police this. Moreover, the task of street cleaning was not separated from road maintenance. Alleyway contexts in Pompeii contained relatively more trash than street contexts, suggesting alleys were not cleared or were cleared less often or favored by households wishing to dispose of remnant conspicuous trash. Street waste accumulated fairly rapidly during antiquity, ground levels rising by several feet per century. Similar estimates are predicted for modern cities as well, if waste from them was not removed. Inside Pompeian households, variability also exists. Data support the hypothesis that larger, more conspicuous elements of bone trash were deposited in pits and predominantly in gardens and courtyards compared to other areas of the house. One might expect bits of rubbish to accumulate in these places. Certainly, composting was practiced in antiquity. We know this for a fact from artifact scatters in fields, a factor of the ancients spreading waste on the land. Manure was jealously guarded. In cities, trash that was missed during any routine collection, along with odd pieces during household cleaning, could be easily disposed of in gardens or earthen courtyards. Some of the bones from these contexts show traces of carnivore gnawing, but compared to other areas, garden deposits contain relatively fewer weathered bones, suggesting fairly rapid burial after deposition. Perhaps there were periodic intervals where accumulations were buried en masse in the garden. Where else did bones accumulate in Pompeian houses? Exhibitions of the impluvia, or the rain-fed pool in the house, produce relatively mixed deposits with a higher proportion of bird, rodent, amphibian, and fish bones. It's possible that this relates to a predisposition to use the impluvia as a convenient dumping area for indiscriminate trash, but not for larger pieces, and not with the intention to taint this water source, which nonetheless wasn't used for drinking anyway. Finally, several latrines in Pompeii produced samples. However, it seems toilets were not the regular spot for bone disposal, well, aside from human dumping. Available assemblages correlate best with isolated mass events, such as food waste from an elite dinner party, as in the case of the collection recovered from a latrine pit in the house of Marcus Lucretius. This material is relatively tightly dated and may signal a one-off event, perhaps from a lazy individual looking for a convenient place to dump refuse. Although all the households analyzed here are arguably clean, that is, not living in trash, some impressions may be drawn about which might seem cleaner. Taking into account factors such as context, amount excavated, and retrieval methods, cleaner houses might include the house of the Vestals and the house of the gilded golden cupids, while dirtier examples might include the house of Marcus Lucretius and the house of the Postumi. All things considered, cleaner houses yielded less faunal material per unit excavated than dirtier ones. This may reflect personal tastes in cleanliness, but more probably convenience of disposal. Note that the house of the Vestals and the house of the gilded golden cupids are closer to the city gates than the others. To conclude, cultivating and enforcing a sense of personal and communal responsibility for rubbish disposal and sustainability was tried at Pompeii. To some degree, neighborhoods were encouraged to keep areas clean, and I think the more we appeal today to individual and communal instincts and competitive spirits to outdo one another in terms of sustainability, the better we might be. There really is a sense of pride in this that we can promote for best measures. Nonetheless, it appears that old habits die hard. Convenience seems to be the largest factor in shaping rubbish disposal practices in ancient Pompeii. And 2,000 years later, in today's world, one might argue this is the same importance of this aspect. While I'm not sure that incorporating more self-cleaning ventures, such as urban feeding yards for dogs, pigs, and other animals to consume city organic waste, is the answer for today's garbage issues, certainly the more we promote the best tactics as the most convenient ones, then we're better situated on the road to increase sustainability. And perhaps we best do this before a volcano erupts on us as well. One cannot enforce how dire the consequences will be if we don't act now. Thank you.